There is something I have noticed over years of sitting across from patients, something that rarely makes it into the medical chart, but lives quietly in the spaces between questions. People begin to notice their eyes before they notice almost any other part of their body, not because vision is the first thing to change, often it is not, but because the eyes are how we reach for the world. They are how we recognize the face of a grandchild across a room, how we read the label on a prescription bottle, how we find our way to the bathroom in the dark. And when that reaching begins to feel unreliable, something deeper than inconvenience stirs. It is the quiet fear of losing connection to the world you have spent a lifetime learning to see. Let us begin with the first food, and to understand its power, we must first understand something about light itself. Light is how you see. It enters the eye, passes through the lens, and lands on the retina. A thin, delicate layer of tissue at the back of the eye, no thicker than a sheet of paper. And there, in that tissue, something extraordinary happens. Photoreceptor cells absorb that light and convert it into electrical signals that travel along the optic nerve to the brain, where they become images, faces, colors, memories. But light, for all its gift of sight, carries something else. It carries energy. And over decades, that energy accumulates. The same blue light that allows you to see the world in crisp detail also places a subtle, persistent stress on the cells that make that seeing possible. It is not damage in the sense of injury. It is more like the slow fading of a photograph left too long in the sun, gradual, cumulative, unnoticed until one day you hold something farther away to read it, or hesitate a moment longer when driving at night, or realize that the world has become just slightly less distinct than it once was. This is where the first food enters the story. Dark, leafy greens, spinach, kale, collard greens, Swiss chard, carry within their deep green pigments a family of compounds called lutein and zeaxanthin. These are not vitamins in the conventional sense. Vitamins are molecules the body cannot make at all, and without them, deficiency diseases appear. Lutein and zeaxanthin belong to a different category. They are carotenoids, the same family of pigments that give carrots their orange color and tomatoes their red. But what makes lutein and zeaxanthin unique is where they go in the body. Of all the carotenoids in the human diet, these two are the only ones that cross into the retina. They are selectively transported across the blood-retina barrier, a protective boundary that keeps most molecules out, and once inside, they settle into the precise locations where light is most intense. The macula, the central part of the retina responsible for the detailed vision you use to read, to recognize faces, to thread a needle. And there, they do something remarkable. Imagine, if you will, that your retina is like a window, and like any window, it is exposed to the sun. Over time, that exposure fades the fabric, the furniture, the photographs inside the room. What lutein and zeaxanthin do is form a kind of internal curtain, a microscopic filter that sits directly in front of the photoreceptor cells and absorbs the high-energy blue light before it can reach them. They are, in the most literal sense, your eye's own built-in sunglasses. But unlike sunglasses, which you put on and take off, these pigments are always there, provided you give your body the raw materials to place them there. And here is what the research tells us with increasing clarity. The density of lutein and zeaxanthin in the retina is directly related to what you eat. People who consume higher amounts of these carotenoids have greater macular pigment density. And greater macular pigment density is associated with better visual function, improved contrast sensitivity, reduced glare disability, and longer preservation of the delicate structures that allow you to see clearly into older age. There is something humbling about this realization. The body cannot make these compounds. It must receive them from the outside world, from the plants that have spent their own lives under the sun, developing these pigments to protect themselves from the very same light. When you eat dark leafy greens, you are not merely consuming calories or fiber or vitamins. You are borrowing a defense mechanism that plants evolved over millions of years. You are taking into your body the very molecules that allow leaves to absorb sunlight without being destroyed by it. And your eyes, which have been exposed to that same sunlight your entire life, recognize these molecules as allies. They welcome them. They transport them across barriers that keep most other things out. They place them precisely where the need is greatest. And then, quietly, without any conscious effort on your part, those molecules begin their work, absorbing, filtering, protecting. But there is another layer to this story that is often overlooked. After 60, the natural density of these protective pigments tends to decline. Not because the body has forgotten how to use them, but because the body becomes more efficient, more selective, more cautious in how it allocates resources. If the raw materials are not consistently present in the diet, the body will prioritize other needs. The eyes, for all their importance, are not the heart. They are not the brain. The body will protect those first. So when you give yourself a consistent supply of dark, leafy greens, not occasionally, not when you remember, but as a regular, reliable part of your eating pattern, you are doing something more profound than simply eating a vegetable. You are sending a signal. You are telling your body that the resources are available, that it can afford to maintain the macular pigment, that it does not have to let that protective shield thin out. You are, in the truest sense, participating in the preservation of your own sight. And that participation, that daily choice, is one of the most powerful tools you have. The science is clear. The mechanism is real. And the greens on your plate are not just food. They are the raw material of seeing. They are the quiet, steady defense against the slow accumulation of light. They are, if you let them be, a gift you give your eyes each day. Let us move now to the second food, and to understand its significance, we must travel to a different environment entirely. Not the sun-drenched fields where leafy greens grow, but the cold, deep waters of the ocean. There, in fish like salmon, sardines, mackerel, and anchovies, something remarkable has been accumulating. Within their flesh and within their oils, they carry a particular kind of fat that the human eye, through millions of years of evolution, has come not merely to use, but to depend upon. These are the omega-3 fatty acids, specifically the forms known as DHA and EPA. And if you have heard of omega-3s before, you have likely heard them discussed in the context of heart health or brain health or inflammation. All of that is true. But what is less often spoken about is how intimately these fats are woven into the very structure of the retina, the thin layer of tissue at the back of the eye where light becomes sight. To appreciate this, we must look at the photoreceptor cells, the rods and cones that absorb light and convert it into electrical signals. These cells are among the most metabolically active in the entire body. They are constantly regenerating their light-sensitive pigments, constantly repairing the wear and tear of exposure, constantly maintaining the delicate membranes that house the molecular machinery of vision. And those membranes, those thin envelopes that surround each photoreceptor cell, are composed largely of fat. Not the solid, clogging fat that people worry about in their arteries, but fluid, flexible, dynamic fats that allow the membrane to change shape, to respond to light, to transmit signals with speed and precision. DHA makes up a significant portion of these membranes. In fact, DHA is concentrated in the retina more than in almost any other tissue in the body. It is not there by accident. It is there because the retina, in its ancient evolutionary wisdom, selected this particular fat as the ideal building block for the cells that must detect the smallest particles of light. But here is what happens over time. The membranes of the photoreceptor cells are constantly being remodeled, broken down, and rebuilt. This is a normal, healthy process, and like any construction project, it requires a steady supply of raw materials. If those raw materials, specifically DHA, are not consistently available in the diet, The body will use whatever fats it has on hand. It will substitute. It will make do. But the substitute is never quite as good. The membrane becomes less fluid, less responsive. The photoreceptor cells cannot regenerate as quickly after a day of exposure to light. The signals they send to the brain become just slightly slower, just slightly less precise. This is not a disease. It is not a dramatic failure. It is the slow, quiet compromise of a body that has been asked to build something without being given the right tools. And after 60, when the natural turnover of these membranes continues, but the body's efficiency in extracting nutrients may have diminished, the gap between what is needed and what is available can widen. There is another layer to this story, and it involves the small blood vessels that nourish the retina. These vessels are among the most delicate in the body. They must be thin enough to deliver oxygen and nutrients to a tissue that is metabolically demanding, yet resilient enough to maintain that delivery over decades. Chronic inflammation, the low-grade, persistent fire that tends to increase with age, can slowly compromise these vessels. It can make them leaky. It can reduce their ability to dilate and constrict as needed. And this is where EPA, the other major omega-3 fatty acid found in fish, plays a critical role. EPA is a powerful modulator of the inflammatory system. It does not suppress inflammation in the way that a drug might, bluntly and indiscriminately. Instead, it provides the body with the raw materials it needs to produce resolvins and protectins, molecules that actively resolve inflammation, that signal the immune system to calm down, that restore balance to tissues that have been stressed. When you consume fatty fish, you are not merely adding DHA for the structure of your photoreceptor membranes. You are also giving your body the tools it needs to maintain the health of the blood vessels that feed those photoreceptors, to keep the environment around the retina calm and stable, to reduce the chronic inflammatory burden that can silently undermine vision over years. There is something almost poetic in this. The fats that allow a fish to thrive in cold, dark waters become, in your body, the fats that protect the most light-sensitive tissue you possess. The same molecules that keep cell membranes fluid at near-freezing temperatures become, in your retina, the molecules that keep photoreceptor membranes fluid enough to respond to the faintest photon of light. Evolution has conserved this relationship across hundreds of millions of years because it works. It is efficient, it is elegant, and after 60, when your body is doing everything it can to maintain what it has built, giving it a consistent supply of these omega-3 fats from fish is not merely supplementation. It is providing the original, the authentic, the form that your retina evolved to expect. It is telling your body that it does not have to substitute, does not have to compromise, does not have to let the membranes of your photoreceptor cells grow just a little less responsive. It is giving your eyes exactly what they need to continue doing what they have done for your entire life, reaching out into the world and bringing back light. The third food is one that appears in kitchens around the world, often used so routinely, so casually, that its deeper value goes entirely unnoticed. It is the egg. And if there is any single food that embodies the principle that whole is greater than the sum of its parts, it is this one. For decades, eggs were viewed with suspicion. They were associated with cholesterol, with heart disease, with dietary caution. And in that process, something essential was lost. The recognition that the egg, particularly the yolk, is one of the most concentrated sources of eye-supporting nutrition that exists in nature. The science has now caught up to what traditional diets understood implicitly. The egg is not something to be feared. It is something to be understood, and once understood, to be honored as a remarkably efficient delivery system for the very compounds the aging eye most desperately needs. Let us begin with lutein and zeaxanthin, the same protective pigments we discussed in dark leafy greens. They are present in eggs, but here is where the story becomes quietly revolutionary. The lutein and zeaxanthin found in egg yolks are not simply present. They are bioavailable in a way that surpasses almost any other food source. What does that mean? It means that when you eat an egg, your body absorbs these carotenoids more efficiently, more completely, than when you eat them from vegetables. There is something about the fat matrix of the yolk, something about the way these compounds are packaged within the egg, that makes them more readily available to the tissues that need them. The body recognizes this package. It has been recognizing it for as long as humans have been eating eggs, and it knows exactly what to do with it. The lutein and zeaxanthin from eggs cross into the retina with remarkable efficiency, where they take their place in the macular pigment, forming that internal shield against the cumulative stress of light exposure. But the egg does not stop there. Within that same small package, it carries another nutrient that is critical to the aging eye: zinc. Zinc is a mineral that functions as a cofactor for hundreds of enzymes in the body, but its role in vision is particularly specific. Vitamin A, which is essential for the visual cycle, cannot be transported from the liver to the retina without adequate zinc. The photoreceptor cells, the rods and cones that absorb light, depend on this steady supply of vitamin A to regenerate their light-sensitive pigments after exposure. Without enough zinc, that transport system slows. The photoreceptors cannot refresh themselves as quickly. Night vision dims. The eyes take longer to adjust from bright light to darkness. And this is not a dramatic failure. It is a quiet compromise, one that happens so gradually that people often do not notice it until they find themselves hesitating when driving at night or reaching for a flashlight to navigate a familiar room. Zinc also plays a critical role in the health of the macula, the central part of the retina responsible for the detailed vision you use to read, to recognize faces, to see the expression in someone's eyes. The macula is metabolically demanding. It requires a constant supply of nutrients and a well-functioning antioxidant defense system. Zinc is a component of one of the most important antioxidant enzymes in the retina, an enzyme that protects the delicate photoreceptor cells from the oxidative stress that accumulates with every decade of life. When zinc levels are adequate, that enzyme functions efficiently. When zinc is insufficient, the retina becomes more vulnerable, more susceptible to the slow wear and tear that time inevitably brings. What makes the egg so remarkable is not any single nutrient in isolation. It is the way these nutrients work together. The lutein and zeaxanthin provide the protective shield. The zinc supports the transport of vitamin A and the antioxidant defense. The healthy fats in the yolk facilitate the absorption of all of these compounds. And the protein in the egg provides the structural building blocks that the tissues of the eye, like all tissues, require for maintenance and repair. This is the principle that modern nutrition science is rediscovering after decades of focusing on isolated vitamins and minerals. The body was not designed to receive nutrients in isolation. It was designed to receive them in combination, in the complex matrices that whole foods provide. An egg is not a lutein supplement with zinc added. It is a complete biological package, one that has been shaped by evolution to deliver exactly what the body needs in a form the body recognizes. There is something humbling in this. For years, eggs were simplified to their cholesterol content, reduced to a single number on a nutritional label, judged by one component while the whole was ignored. But the whole matters. The egg is not merely the sum of its parts. It is the relationship between those parts, the way the fat facilitates the absorption of the carotenoids, the way the protein provides context for the minerals, the way the entire package delivers nutrition with an efficiency that isolated supplements cannot replicate. After 60, when the body is doing everything it can to maintain the structures it has built, giving it a consistent supply of eggs is not simply adding nutrients. It is providing a complete, coherent, biologically recognized package of exactly what the aging eye needs. It is telling your body that it does not have to work harder to extract and absorb. It is giving it something it already knows how to use, something that fits into the ancient metabolic pathways that have been running inside you since before you were born. The egg is small, it is ordinary, it is easy to overlook. But within that ordinary shell is an extraordinary concentration of precisely what the eye after 60 most urgently requires. The fourth food takes us into the orange and yellow spectrum of the harvest, into the colors that have been associated with vision for so long that the connection has become almost folklore. Carrots, yes, but also sweet potatoes, butternut squash, orange bell peppers, and the deep golden flesh of cantaloupe. The familiar wisdom that these foods are good for the eyes is not mere tradition. It is rooted in a biological reality that scientists have now mapped in considerable detail. Within these orange and yellow foods lies a family of compounds called carotenoids, and among them is beta-carotene, one of the most abundant and most important provitamin A carotenoids in the human diet. Provitamin A means exactly what it sounds like. It is a precursor, a molecule that the body can convert into vitamin A, the essential nutrient that forms the very foundation of the visual cycle. To understand why this matters, we must look at what happens inside the eye when light enters. The photoreceptor cells, the rods and cones that line the retina, contain light-sensitive pigments. These pigments are made of a protein called opsin, combined with a derivative of vitamin A called retinol. When light strikes this pigment, the retinol molecule changes shape, triggering a cascade of events that ultimately sends an electrical signal to the brain. It is the moment of seeing. But after that change occurs, the retinol molecule must be regenerated, returned to its original shape, so that it can respond to the next photon of light. This regeneration happens constantly, every second of every day, for your entire life, and it depends entirely on a steady supply of vitamin A. Without adequate vitamin A, the regeneration slows. The photoreceptors become less responsive. Night vision is the first to suffer because the rods, which are responsible for vision in dim light, are particularly demanding of this cycle. People begin to notice that it takes longer to adjust when entering a dark room, that driving at night feels more uncertain, that the world after sunset becomes less distinct. But the orange and yellow foods offer something beyond vitamin A. They carry a range of carotenoids that work together to protect the retina from oxidative stress, the cellular wear and tear that accumulates with every decade of life. Beta-carotene itself is a powerful antioxidant. It has the ability to quench singlet oxygen, a particularly damaging form of reactive molecule that can be generated in the retina by exposure to light. Other carotenoids found in these foods, such as alpha-carotene and beta-cryptoxanthin, provide additional antioxidant support. And here is where the science becomes more interesting. These compounds do not act in isolation. They work together. They form a network of protection, each one covering slightly different molecular territory, each one supporting the others in ways that are still being unraveled by research. The orange and yellow foods are not simply beta-carotene delivery systems. They are complex packages of multiple carotenoids, all of which contribute to the antioxidant defense of the tissues that are most exposed to light. There is another layer to this story that speaks to something deeper than biochemistry. The colors of these foods are not decorative. They are not accidental. They are the plant kingdom's own protective pigments, evolved over hundreds of millions of years to absorb the energy of the sun. A carrot growing in the ground is exposed to the same sun that your eyes have been exposed to for your entire life. It cannot move. It cannot find shade. It must endure that exposure. And over evolutionary time, it developed the ability to produce these carotenoid pigments as a defense against the very oxidative stress that sunlight creates. When you eat that carrot, you are not merely consuming beta-carotene. You are borrowing a protection that the plant evolved to survive under the sun. You are taking into your body the very molecules that allow a plant to thrive in conditions that would otherwise damage its cells. And your eyes, which spend a lifetime under that same sun, recognize these molecules as allies. They welcome them. They use them. This is where the philosophical dimension of nutrition reveals itself. We tend to think of food as fuel, as calories, as building blocks, and it is all of those things, but it is also something more. Food is the bridge between the outside world and the inner world of your body. The compounds that were formed in the soil, under the sun, within the tissues of a plant, become the compounds that protect the most light-sensitive tissue you possess. There is continuity there. There is relationship. The same sun that warmed the field where the carrot grew is the sun that your eyes have learned to navigate your entire life. And the pigments that the carrot developed to protect itself from that sun become, in your body, the pigments that help protect your vision from the cumulative effects of that same exposure. After 60, when the body's natural antioxidant systems are not what they once were, when the cumulative stress of decades of light exposure has left its mark, the choice to include these orange and yellow foods in your diet is not merely a nutritional decision. It is a recognition of that continuity. It is an acknowledgement that your body and the plant world share a common challenge and that the solutions the plants developed over millennia can become, through the simple act of eating, your own. The orange and yellow foods are ordinary. They are familiar, they are easy to find and easy to prepare. But within their ordinary appearance is an extraordinary gift, the ability to borrow from the plant kingdom a protection that your eyes, after 60, deeply need. There is a deeper truth that runs beneath all of these foods, and it is this: the body after 60 is not a machine that has begun to fail. It is a system that has learned to prioritize. It has spent decades observing your patterns, your stresses, your recoveries, and it has developed a kind of wisdom that cannot be found in any textbook. It knows that resources are not infinite. It knows that some structures are more critical than others, and so it allocates carefully. If it does not receive the raw materials it needs for maintenance, it will slowly, quietly let the less critical structures wait. The eyes, for all their importance, are not the heart. They are not the brain. The body will protect those first. It will preserve the engine before it polishes the windows. And this is not a design flaw. It is the intelligence of survival. But here is what most people never hear. When you give your body a consistent supply of the nutrients it needs, the lutein and zeaxanthin from dark leafy greens and eggs, the omega-3 fatty acids from fatty fish, the carotenoids from orange and yellow vegetables, you are not merely eating, you are sending a signal. You are telling your body that the resources are available, that it does not have to choose between protecting the heart and preserving the vision that lets you see the face of someone you love. You are participating actively and intentionally in the preservation of your own sight. I am Dr. Martin Hale, and this channel, Senior Health, is dedicated to helping you understand your body at every stage of life. If this video brought you something valuable, if it helped you see the foods on your plate differently, if it gave you a sense of agency where there may have been uncertainty, if it offered a measure of hope, then I would be grateful if you would share it with someone who needs to hear it. There are people in your life, people you love, who may be navigating these same changes without understanding what is happening inside them. A simple share could be the thing that shifts their perspective. If you have not already, I invite you to subscribe to this channel, to become part of a community where we approach aging not as something to fear, but as something to understand, to honor, and to navigate with knowledge and compassion. Hit the like button if this video resonated with you. It helps others find this content when they need it most. And I would love to hear from you in the comments. What have you noticed about your own vision? What changes have you experienced? What questions do you carry? I read the comments, and your questions often become the next video. Thank you for spending this time with me. Thank you for being curious about your own body, and I will see you in the next one.